Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den. With me, your host, Jordan, your Master of Lore and Storyteller Extraordinaire. We are continuing on today with our Alchemist build guide for the Bombing Specialist. This is your demolition person, the one that's always going to be out there on the battlefield, hucking around all those very, very dangerous, very volatile, and very, very deadly explosives. Now, this is a really fun build, and the more I dig into this class, the more fun I'm having with it. And also, there's a lot of variable builds with it, but we're going to get to why next time around. For now, we are going to be focusing on the skills and the feats that we want to have for our bomber. So, let's get this rolling, shall we? Starting us off, Perception. Perception is just without a doubt the most regularly used skill in the game, no matter what class you're playing. Even if it's not a class skill, put points into it, because you never know, maybe you'll get lucky, you'll roll that 18, 19, or 20, and your total will come up to something that actually lets you be aware of what's happening, maybe even before some of the other characters. So always put points into this one. And after that, we have Knowledge Arcana and Knowledge Nature. Now, these two I put together at the same time because, well, they're useful for a lot of the same things. And in this case, both are going to be useful for identifying most of the creatures that you're going to come across. And identifying them is going to be important because, well, while maybe you know that the red dragons have an immunity or a very high resistance to fire, your character doesn't necessarily know that, and so having that knowledge ahead of time is going to be useful, so that way you know when you're mixing your bombs together, you're not going to use the base fire damage against them. You're going to switch over to cold or to sonic damage or literally anything other than just straight up fire damage, just so you can actually hurt them and participate in combat. And not only that, but this is sort of house rule-ish for me, but I know a lot of other tables, a lot of other DMs and players will use these skills for identifying a lot of rare materials. For Knowledge Nature, that's going to be, mosses with magic effects, or rare herbs and roots, or berries even, that can be utilized in a lot of neat and interesting ways. And same thing for Knowledge Arcana. You're going to look at rare metals and minerals, different sacs or venom glands that creatures like wyverns might actually have that can be harvested and used as reagents for any number of different spells, or just sold to people looking to buy those things for their own purposes. So definitely a skill you can get a lot of different uses out of if you apply a little bit of creativity and clever thinking to it. But then, going after that, we have Spellcraft, another one that is just going to be useful and important for you, especially since you're a spellcaster, maybe only 2/3 spellcaster, going up to 6th level spells rather than 9th, but still, this is going to let you decipher scrolls, craft magic items, identify spells that are being cast at you. No reason at all for you to not have this one with some ranks into it. And then also we have Fly. And if you can fly, whether it's by magic, creatures, or some magic item, having the overhead advantage for throwing your bombs down onto your targets is going to be really useful. For one thing, you're not having to deal with any difficult terrain. Secondly, you're not dealing with a lot of spells that are based on the ground, which also incidentally tend to count as difficult terrain, so you're negating a lot of trouble that you might otherwise have to deal with. Hell, even if you just have some sort of basic levitation that keeps you above the ground, you avoid a lot of that, and also avoid activating a good chunk of the traps that you might encounter. Then, moving on from Fly, we have Craft Alchemy. Now, don't be dumb, don't be daft. This one's really important for you, and you get a lot of really big bonuses. This lets you craft a lot of alchemical items like Tanglefoot bags or even Thunderstones. These things are going to be really, really useful for you. And not only that, but you can sell these and maybe make a little bit extra coin on the side. And, maybe not as much as adventuring, but you have some downtime. You have a pretty clear activity on what your character's doing. well, clear idea on what your character's doing, what activities they're up to. Apologies. Goodness, it's after 5 o'clock already in the morning. Anyways, moving on from craft alchemy, which is important, and really, aside from it just being a skill that you get a lot of bonuses with, you're an alchemist. You want craft alchemy. It maybe for some builds it's fluff, but you know what? Put points into it. Don't be stupid. After that, we have Disable Device. Now, you're not going to be disabling magical traps like a rogue can, but preventing damage is always handy, and your extracts can be used to give you a boost. The different magics that you have access to can give you a boost. So, having a couple of points in here can be useful. Plus, the fact that this is based off of one of our prime stats for this build, that's going to help quite a bit as well too. And since it's a class skill, even 1 point will net you that extra +3 miscellaneous bonus. So you're starting off not too bad even with just a single point in here. Maybe it's not something you do every level, but if you're pulling double duty on traps and helping the party to avoid those, it can be useful for you to have this one. But going on from there, and it's still in the same vein as something that can be useful for you to have, we have Sleight of Hand. Again, you're not going to be as good as the rogue is on this, but you can see instances where this might be handy. I mean, you're a clever, tricky little alchemist. Why not do Sleight of Hand? Mix around and move around the different reagents that you use for crafting your bombs, or any number of potions, or even just quietly swiping something off of the counter from whatever shop you're going to. Now, moving on from there, we get to the skills that are definitely not as useful to kind of useless for you. In this case, Survival and Heal. Both of these are going to be pretty readily replaced by your extracts early on. And assuming your DM is putting you in conditions to use these, maybe they're going to be worth that initial point put into them, especially since you're going to get a +3 bonus out of it. But not much more than that. I mean, really, healing yourself with a magic wand, healing others with a magic wand is going to be much better and really much cheaper, because you want to free up those skill points for any of the other ones that you have, as the alchemist does not get a lot of skill points. They get 4 skill points per level plus whatever your intelligence modifier is, so you're going to want to allocate accordingly. You'll get plenty of extra, but Survival and Heal you can pretty safely skip on. Now the next one here is kind of tricky. It's the Appraise skill. I'll be honest, in my experience, a lot of campaigns don't really feature this a whole lot, or at least not consistently. I mean, if it does, if the DM tells you that, yeah, maybe somebody should have the Appraise skill, that can be helpful. It can, in that instance, definitely somebody should have some points in it, or at least 2 members of the party should. It can help you generate a lot of coin and help you keep from being swindled on some items by being able to estimate and appraise an item's approximate value. So that can be helpful there. But if it's really not a skill that's getting used a lot, you're probably going to be safe to ignore it. I know in a lot of my campaigns, usually that's the case. Very rarely do... it generally gets replaced with knowledge checks in a lot of cases for me. Unless a character is built around it. If you want to build your character around being an appraisal expert, being able to judge the value of different reagents, then you know what? Do it, build it, and ideally DMs, storytellers, if you have a character that has put points in a skill, provide opportunities for them to make use of it so that the character can stay engaging and useful. I'm not saying hold their hands, wipe their noses, and pick them up every time a boo-boo's made, but give the characters an opportunity to shine. You're all there to have fun, and if they're trying to build and participate and make something interesting with their character, then go with it, see where it goes. And then if it doesn't work out so good, offer them the opportunity to reallocate skill points. It's not strictly by the rules, but you know what? Nobody wants to play something that's broken and useless. Speaking of which, this isn't necessarily broken, but definitely something you're not going to get a lot of use out of, and that's a use magic device. You've got plenty of different spells in your extracts list and your formula list that, well, formulas count as spells, so activating wands and scrolls shouldn't really be a problem for you as long as you have those spells on the spell list. To top it off, this skill works off of charisma, and charisma is the dump stat for this build through and through. So, you know, this is one that you can skip pretty safely in most instances. But that's the skills. Those are the skills that the bomber has. What feats do we have for the skills? Now, from a recent viewer has led me to making some improvements here just to help out a bit. And I've numbered the feats, and also I've counted up to 10 feats, which is about what a level 20 character will end up having. Now, the first 5 here, all 5 of these are out of the basic player's handbook, the basic core rulebook here, and most of these are found around the page 131. Not all of them are there, but they're in that same area, so you should be able to find these pretty readily. And also, these first 5 are in an order that I think is going to be most useful. It just seems to really play out really well with the numbers, and the next 5, there's more wiggle room on, and certainly if something appeals to you more, feel free to adjust and move this list around based on what your character can qualify for. So with that said, first on this list of feats is Improved Initiative. This is useful again for pretty much any character class, any character build. But in this case, going first is going to always be useful, especially if when you're chucking your bombs, the enemy is clustered together, because you want to maximize that splash damage. After that, we have Point Blank Shot. You get a +1 bonus to hit and damage on targets that are inside of 30 feet. Now, again, you want to maximize your damage as much as possible. And also getting a +1 bonus to hit, especially against Touch Armor class at level 1, that is a pretty significant bonus here. This also gets rated blue because while it doesn't scale well later levels, it's a prerequisite for this will eliminate the -4 penalty you get for throwing bombs at a target in melee with another creature. You know, like your group's fighter might be. You're gonna kind of need this one. You're really gonna want this one. This one will be very, very useful because at these lower levels especially, you can't afford to have a -4 penalty. Then going after that with Rapid Shot, you make an extra melee attack. You get to make an extra ranged attack at your highest base attack bonus with a -2 penalty. Now I said before you can't afford a -4 penalty. -2 is much more doable, especially since if you're throwing into a melee fight, you're not taking a cumulative total of -6. Having only a -2 is much more doable, especially if you have some splash damage going on, and against Touch Armor class. And again, if they're inside of 30 feet, you have that +1 bonus there, you're down to just a -1. So again, this really works together very nicely, although maybe it's a bit closer range than you might like. But we go from there to 2-weapon fighting. Now, this is 5 feats in, so we're sitting around level 10 here, and our attack bonus is increasing pretty decently at this point. Also, I should mention, we're picking up these feats. There's an ability that you can select later and from one of your discoveries, and that's Fast Bombs. We'll get into that more in a later video, but Fast Bombs essentially lets you make and throw bombs for as many attacks as you have. So by this point, that should be about 2. 2-weapon fighting will let you make a 3rd attack at your highest base attack bonus. In this case, you're going to be doing that with your offhand, and this feat will reduce the penalties for doing so. Bombs are also small weapons, so you get the minimum penalties with -2 penalties to attack there, and this will stack with with rapid shot. So you're getting a -4, but you're making 4 bomb attacks in a round if you choose. So you're going to be throwing out some pretty significant damage there, and given that you should have, through your discoveries, you should have some different options available, you could be potentially throwing out some debuffs and different damage types as well. So really, really handy thing to have. And it definitely significantly boosts your damage output. I think you're starting to see where the whole Mad Bomber thing, the whole bomb-chucking alchemist idea is kind of coming together. For the 6th feat, I have Splash Weapon Mastery. Now what this does is this acts like the Far Shot feat, but for splash weapons. And not only that, you add an extra square near the target that you hit to take splash damage. And you can adjust misses on the miss grid by + or -1 and shift direction over there to make a miss a bit less painful. Now, this feat specifically you can find in the Pathfinder Companion Adventurer's Armory. So that should help you narrow down the search if referring to the website that I listed previous episode doesn't help you, or if you happen to have that book on hand. For feat number 7, we have Improved Precise Shot. Now, what this will do for you is it eliminates cover bonuses and concealment bonuses on your attacks. Since we don't have the highest base attack bonus and we're incurring some penalties already with our feat selection, like 2-weapon fighting and rapid shot, eliminating enemy bonuses is really, really useful to have. And then extra discovery. So, like I mentioned, discoveries are going to alter or add options for your different class abilities, and in this case specifically our bombs. More tactical choices are only going to help, and this feat is found in the Advanced Player's Guide. For number 9, I have additional traits put down here. With this, you gain 2 more traits, and I should mention, traits are a thing I forget exists in Pathfinder. I've been playing in Pathfinder for years now, but it just doesn't come up very often because I'm already working with players based on their backstories to give them different bonuses, and I try to tailor it a bit more to what the players, to what their background is, what their story is, what their character-wise negative and positive personality traits are. I try to build things around that already, but using traits like this is something that is rules as written, it's already down here, and in theory it's sort of balanced, kind of, maybe. But point being, additional traits lets you select 2 more traits, so by the rules that's a total of 4 traits that a character can have. And the extra traits you want to pick up here are Accelerated Drinker, which makes potions, and therefore, at least in my own ruling and understanding of the rules, extracts as a move action. So this helps with your action economy quite a bit, which is something, going for a more optimized build, you absolutely have to be all about. The other trait that you pick up is Reactionary, which gets you a +2 trait bonus to initiative. Absolutely an incredibly helpful choice, especially since with improved initiative, this will bump us up to a +6 total on your initiative score, and you should already have a pretty solid dexterity score to go with this, so you're going to be moving pretty quick pretty often, unless you roll abysmally low on your initiative rolls, and this even still will help make that be a little bit less painful. And then after that, for the level 10 feat, the 10th feat, I picked out Ability Focus here. Now, this is something that is more a monster-oriented feat, but it's one that I would let players pick up. What this does is it gives you a +2 bonus to the save DCs for your bombs. So the difficulty for any save effects that might be had for any of the bombs you might have gets increased by a +2. That's awesome, especially with the number of bombs you're going to be throwing. And that +2 margin there is actually relatively significant, even at later levels, since the higher your level, the more things have already been stacking. So jumping that up a little bit more will be helpful for you in making sure that the effects of your bombs stick. But these are all just my take, my read on what seems to be most mechanically effective. Certainly the order for these last 5 is not set in stone, and some of these maybe will work better for you earlier on in the listing. And also the skills are not necessarily set in stone either. Certain settings, certain situations that may be built in that your DM is kind enough to let you know about beforehand may warrant certain skills be bumped up a little bit higher in their importance. So, just again, like I said before in the Witch's Guide and through all the other guide videos, take this as just more a look at what is mechanically effective, draw what's useful from it, but then add in what is essentially your own. Be very Bruce Lee about this. Take what's useful and add what is essentially your own to the character. This is your character. Don't build entirely just based off of numbers. Well, unless that's what you want to do, but do what you want, do what's going to be the most fun. We're going to be continuing this guide later by taking a look at the different class abilities, which, to be honest, there's a lot to unpack there that might be broken up into a couple of different videos there, but we'll find out next time. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and with that said, thank you all for joining me here. Have yourselves a good night.